Good morning. Today we have Dr. Atul Khosla, and you are welcome again. New episode of Decoding New Education Policy. With today episode, we have Atul Khosla. Atul Khosla is entrepreneur, educationist, and management consultant. Atul Khosla is founder and pro chancellor at Chulini University, Solan, Himachal Pradesh, India leading research-centric not-for-profit private university. Atul left his corporate job to move to Sholini full time and pursue his dream to giving back to the community by building a world class university. At Sholini University, Atul drives new initiative, starting new innovation, academic programs, scholarship for underprivileged students, initiating partnership with the industries. And Atul is doing lots of activities, and I think he is right now the backbone of the university. I welcome Atul Khosla for this new episode of New Education Policy. Hi, sir. How are you?
Very well, Manish. First of all, thank you for inviting me over. It's my honor to speak to all you wonderful people today. Hopefully, we'll have a wonderful discussion. The format will be I'd love to speak for around 20-25 minutes. The new education policy is very, very dear to my heart, and I would then love to answer all the questions that you all have. So, let's have a wonderful discussion today, Manish.
Sure, sir. Sir, you will present your presentation first, and after that, we will ask some question with you.
Absolutely.
Sure, sir. So, presentation, sir, you are right now opening or?
I will. Can I start, Manish?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So, once again, good morning to all of you. And like I said, it's so amazing and exciting to speak to all of you today. My name is Atul Khosla. I am the founder and pro vice chancellor of Sholini University, Kasoli Hills. Our dream at Sholini is to build a truly world class university where we can have a confluence of great learning along with deep research. So we started this journey around 10 years back. And when I read the new education policy, I am so excited because a lot of things that we are doing at Sholini are all covered in the new education policy. In fact, with academicians, sometimes it's difficult to convince them because we have an old way of doing things. I'm also excited about the new education policy because I genuinely believe it's the right thing to do. And, it's so easier to implement because now there is a common consensus, not just within academicians, but a common consensus across the nation. The way I'm going to structure my presentation today will be three things. I will talk a little bit about the philosophy behind the new education policy. I'll talk a bit about the rationale behind the new education policy. Why is there a need for change? And I will then get into the details of what the new education policy does. I'll break it down into both what's applicable in terms of K-12, which is school education, and also what's applicable in terms of higher education, which is HEIs, as the new education policy speaks about. So let's step back and ask ourselves, why do we need a new education policy? And I'm going to ask you to go back 1,000 years. So let's go back to 1000 AD, or even before that. India, at that point of time, we've all heard, was Sone ki Chidiya. I'm not sure whether it was Sone ki Chidiya or not, but one thing which is documented, and is documented very, very well, is that India contributed to 25% of the world's GDP. 25% of the world's GDP came from India. Amazing, isn't it? Am I there,
Yes.
Manish? I
Yes,
lost
sir.
my.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
we can listen.
That's it. Sorry, I think I lost. Somewhere around 1200 AD, we had an erosion of our institutions of higher learning. Our school system, our university system that we were all very proud of, started getting eroded. Multiple reasons for that, and I won't go into those reasons. But from a nation that was a knowledge creator, which led to that amazing economic growth, we became a knowledge consumer. India went through lots of attacks from foreigners, and we know all about it. But something again amazing happened starting 1600 AD. The world was going through amazing industrial revolution, and this industrial revolution was being led by university system of the West. So if you go back and understand the university system of the West and the genesis of that, whether it's Oxford or Cambridge or the others, it was all initiated by the church. The first university in the world was the University of Bologna in Italy, and then after that, Oxford got founded. The church was pushing the frontiers of science, and Renaissance happened, the Industrial Revolution happened, and the world changed. The printing press came into play, communication became way easier, military power got into the hands of Western nations, and many inventions happened. There was rapid economic progress in the Western nations. And now step back and let's come to India. Our university system had been destroyed. While the world was going through Renaissance and Industrial Revolution, India completely missed the bus. We missed Industrial Revolution. So by the time the Britishers left in 1947, 1948, India was amongst the poorest countries of the world. And my belief is that it happened because of the lack of university education. I don't think it was the British who were responsible for it. It was basically gradual erosion of our education system over 1,000 years that led to this decline. Which means, my friends, if India has to regain its position in the world, if we aspire to be a world power, if you want to be amongst the richest nations of the world that we want to, education has to play a great role. Education will have to play and will play a great role. Let's now go back to the United States. The United States in the early 20th century, which is the 1900s, was not the best and the greatest nations of the world. The United States of America was probably still developing in those days. Western Europe was at its peak. Then World War II happened. That was the time that the United States of America disproportionately invested in higher education, in school education. They poached the Jews, the professors who were phenomenal professors from Germany and other parts of Europe, into the United States. The greatest universities of the world were incubated at that point of time, whether it's MIT, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, you name it. They took 1940 to 1944 as the challenge to build an amazing education system, which then led to the growth or the rapid growth of the United States of America. Of course, they imported a lot of talent from Europe. And that was the beauty of the United States. China, incidentally, has done the same, Manish. Many of you might not know, but between Hong Kong and China, there are at least 15 universities which are in the top 100 of the world. In India, we have not one university, not even the mighty IITs or the Indian Institute of Science or Delhi University in the top 200. Our challenge is, Manish, that we keep on saying that these rankings are not appropriate for India. That's the wrong way to think about it. So I'm so glad that this new government is thinking about significantly enhancing the broader education platform of the country. So what does it mean? Currently, we have 2% of investment of our GDP into education. The new education policy pushes this to 6%. Now, historically also, we've spoken about 6%. I do hope implementation happens. So what will happen when 6% happens? It will be rapid growth of new schools that come into place. Quality schools, new universities, new institutions of higher learning that will come into place. Phenomenal change that's hopefully going to happen. The government will spend more and more money. So 20% of public expenditure is planned to get into education. Wow. What a phenomenal change that's going to happen from the 6% today. 100% of students are expected to join the schooling system. That's called gross enrollment ratio, 100% by 2030. And 50% of those students should get a college degree. Now imagine a new India, Manish, where everyone is not just literate, but a new terminology has come into place, which is literacy and numeracy. So every Indian should not just be literate in the alphabet, but should understand the numeral, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the calculations underneath it. I teach at Shulini. I always complain about the Indian educational system. Sometimes I joke, Manish, that students go through 15 years of educational abuse. And then they come to university and they expect magic to happen. Hopefully, with the new education policy, we'll change all of this. So that was sort of the philosophy behind the new education policy. I went back and said we were doing some really right things way back in 1080 or even before that. So what were those right things? Those right things were transdisciplinary education, not just focusing on one area, but actually going out and learning across areas, the learning of the softer skills. So if you go and read the Mahabharata, then Dronacharya did not just teach the Kauravas and the Pandavas the art of fighting or the bow and arrow, but they taught them the softer subjects. The Pandavas were also great artists. They could sing, they could dance, they could do theater, because the right side of the brain is so much needed for creative people. You need to build creative people, and the moment you create a bunch of creative people, leadership happens. Unfortunately, our universities today focus, I am doing BTech mechanical engineering. Okay, very good. You might be a great mechanical engineer, but you don't know anything about life. You have no leadership skills. Your communication skills are poor. And I can still question your technical skills. That's why they don't get jobs. And the new education policy first talks about transdisciplinary education. Secondly, it talks about learning with your hands. The Bloom's taxonomy says that the highest form of learning is when learning happens by creating. And the worst form of learning is when learning happens through remembering. And the new education policy, right from the preschool stage or the foundation stage, as they call it, is talking about learning by doing, learning with experiments, learning by understanding other subjects beyond your core subject. So that's the broad philosophy of the new education policy. The idea is that we become a knowledge creator nation, not a knowledge consuming nation. And the day that happens, India will become a great country. So what is the new education policy all about? I've got a small presentation. I'm going to take 10 minutes taking you through the details of that, Manish, if you allow me.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
So here it is. Let me bring up my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Well, that's the
Yes, sir.
beautiful campus of Shulini. Like I said, we're in the middle of a pine forest. We actually are a resort. We actually are a Gurukul. We believe education should be in the form of a beautiful, inspiring campus, which is studded with truly high technology. And that's what we've done. And that's what the new education policy also speaks about. So let's look at the new education policy highlights. The first, from a technical perspective, is going to replace the national education policy of 1986. And it's going to pave the way for fundamental transformational reforms in school and higher education in the country. Wow, phenomenal. We've all been complaining about the education system. Hopefully, the new education policy will bring this into play. So what are the highlights for schools? I'll spend 3 minutes on this. The first is moving away from 10+2 to a 5+3+3+4 system. What are these 5+3+3+4? The first stage is the foundation stage, where the first 3 years are pre-primary and then grade 1 and 2. They will be multi-level activity based, discovery-led learning based. No exams, no learning of alphabets, no learning on numerals, and no textbooks. Wow, imagine. I was speaking to a friend of mine who has a 6-year-old kid. This kid today, Manish, has to go through amazing amount of homework. Just think about it. So sad. This kid was so extrovert, ended up in school, became an introvert, would stop speaking to people around her. And then COVID happened. Suddenly she's got her blossom back. She's got the smile back. And that's sometimes that schools do to you, to the children. So hopefully the first 5 years will lay the foundation of very happy children, children who want to learn, not are forced to learn. Second stage is going to be the preparatory stage. That's going to be grade 3, 4, 5. So this would mean gradual incorporation of textbooks into the classroom. The middle stage is going to be grade 6, 7, 8. That's introduction to formal subjects. And now concept-based learning and experiential learning will be brought into place. We want to make sure, like I said, that there is literacy and numeracy that comes into students. And finally, the secondary stage, which is 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, which will be multidisciplinary, critical thinking, and flexibility with electives. There will be no rigid separation between arts and sciences. I like to bring it up over here that even if you're an arts graduate from the United States, you can still become a doctor. And that's the type of education we want to have for our students. And that's what the new education policy pushes. So no homework up to young ages, and then up to grade 5, students should learn in their home language, their mother tongue or regional language. We all know that we always learn better when it's in the mother tongue. So why don't we do and start doing that? That's going to be a big change for all these convent schools that teach in English or other private schools that teach in English. So hopefully this will be a very successful thing. There's going to be a diluted board. So board exams will happen twice a year. There's going to be less focus on that one final exam. There's going to be continuous evaluation. There's going to be lingual activity brought into play. And finally, like I said, bag-less days. So students and parents don't have to give those huge bags that they give to their students right now. For schools, very specifically, there's going to be a new regulator. It's called the State School Standards Authority. And there's going to be self-declaration on your website rather than inspections that happen right now. What a phenomenal change. There's going to be a school complex created around in a district so that each school can share its learnings and support each other. Especially this will be true for government schools, where we're going to create clusters of excellence, which is going to be the part of this initiative. More and more people will be encouraged to start schools and universities. Of course, not for profit, because the whole belief of education is that it should be not for profit. Let's look at what's the highlight for higher education. So first of all, no more JEE, no more NEET. There's going to be one SAT-like college test. It's called the National Testing Agency that's going to be set up for this exam. So big changes over there. There'll be 4-year degrees that will be allowed. And in the final year, students will be pushed towards research. 4 years back, Shulini started a research-centric undergrad program. We were inspired by Harvard University. That was the first program in India that had real research embedded inside undergraduate. We've had phenomenal success. And from that experience, I can tell all of you, dear audience, that this 4-year degree will be stellar. Another interesting part of this 4-year degree would be that if you've done 4 years of bachelor's, then your PG or your postgraduate will be 1 year. So PG could be 1 year for a 4-year bachelor student or 2 years for a 3 years bachelor student. Students will have the ability to enter and exit a program. So many students that I meet many times cannot continue, either because of distractions or because of compulsions from home. So now after 1 year, you can leave. You can get a certificate. After 2 years, you leave, you get a diploma. After 3 years, you leave, you get a degree. And there's a national credit bank that will be set up, which means your education will not be wasted. You can come back after 1 year, after 3 years, after 6 years, and continue from where you left. Wonderful stuff for students. Imagine a situation where I do my first 6 months of education at Shulini, the next 6 months at Punjab University, Chandigarh, the next 6 months at Delhi University, and the remaining part in the United States of America. What an amazing education that will be for students. And that's going to be possible now with the new education policy and the National Credit Bank. So colleges will have to become multidisciplinary. That's what they say. There will no science colleges or engineering colleges. We want students who learn everything. So multidisciplinary education. I'll give an example over here. At Shulini, for example, you as a student can have a major and a minor. A major is an area that you specialize in, and a minor is an area that you're interested in, that you're passionate about. So I've got students, for example, who've done a major in computer science and a minor in music. What a phenomenal combination. You guys might not know, but Steve Jobs was actually a great musician. He also was very fond of arts, liberal arts. In fact, he states that if he had not learned graphic science or the art of writing, calligraphy, he could not have created the Apple computer which changed the world. So the right side of the brain has to work with the left side of the brain, and that's when success happens. We've already done that at Shulini, and I'm so excited that this will be done across the country today. There's going to be a bit of a fee cap. Some institutions go out and charge extraordinary money, exorbitant money. I think that should stop. We live in a country where people are relatively poor. So till that, economic excitement happens and that growth happens, I think there needs to be a fee cap. Our students definitely cannot go out and pay the $100,000 that, for example, a US university charges. And finally, foreign universities will be invited into the country. Indian universities will be pushed to go global. And that's the whole global thing. We should be vocal and still be global. So multidisciplinary, flexibility in education, liberal arts coming in, one regulator. So all us university people and all our college people will now have to deal with one regulator rather than a very fractured regulatory environment today. PCI, BCI, AICTE, state regulator, UGC, all will go away and there'll be one regulator that will be created. There'll be one strong multidisciplinary HEI in every district. So students will not have to travel far and wide for great education. Each of these universities will have 3,000 plus students and will be multidisciplinary. We aspire to have a 50% gross enrollment ratio by 2030. Universities will be encouraged to do research. So there'll be three types of universities that will come up: research universities, teaching universities, and autonomous colleges. Over time, autonomous colleges will be pushed to become teaching universities, and teaching universities will be pushed to become research universities. The concept of a university, my dear friends, a university by definition has to be in deep research and innovation. And I'm so proud to say that Shulini today is a top 3 university of India. We beat many of the IITs on academic research. There's something called the Field Weighted Citation Index, where Shulini has the 3rd highest in the country. And that's the type of passion that every university needs to have to make sure that each of the students learn by doing research. So that's sort of a high level concept. So there'll be more money coming into research. There's something called the NRF, which is being founded, the National Research Foundation. So 20,000 crores of research grants will be available. Research grants by definition are competitive grants. So anyone can apply, and whoever has the best proposal gets it. Hopefully there'll be no corruption there. That's my hope. And I really believe it. There'll be online push into education. There's a new National Education Technology Forum being created so that everyone gets technology. Again, at Shulini, we started working on technology 10 years back, and we have Manish, one of the best technology in the world, not just India. It's AI driven, it's driven by machine language. It's absolutely flawless and seamless. And when it comes to bandwidth and internet, we've just upgraded ourselves to a 5 gig fiber network. It's called a PON, or a passive optical network. We have now the best technology in the world. We could probably even beat the Harvard and the MIT when it comes to connectivity and technology. Once universities start investing in faculty, in technology, and giving great education to students, India will become a great country. So I spoke about the structure of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. That's really what's going to happen. On the school education, we're talking like, again, do a recap: 100% GER, no rigid separation between academic streams, and a holistic reforms card, which is 360-degree. Amazing stuff. Teachers, one point I missed, will now have to do a 4-year integrated BA education degree rather than undergrad and BEd degree. So amazing reforms over there. They'll be pushed towards teachers learning technology because they will be teaching through technology. So lots of new universities hopefully will come up. These multidisciplinary universities will be at par with IITs and IIMs and will be global standards. New foreign universities brought in, flexibility in program completion. If a student wants to exit an entry, he can do that. A science student can go out and do a minor, which I explained how it happens, already happening at Shullini and many other great universities across the world. And finally, a student can drop off if he or she wants and then come back through the National Accreditation Council. There's going to be a credit system for graduation, 4-year degrees. The syllabus will be reduced to the core knowledge of any subject, which is so critical. And they will be focused on practicals and experimental by doing. Regulatory changes in terms of the new structure. I won't spend more time on this because that might not be relevant for you, but if you have questions, I'll be delighted to answer them. So new structures in terms of the Accreditation Council, in terms of funding, the new Grants Council, in terms of standard setting, and making colleges and universities more autonomous in terms of the way they run and the way they manage themselves. New funding happening through the NATF and NRF, and hopefully a great education system that comes up, which has the best education system of the world, whether it's a school level or at the higher education level. It sounds easy than said, than done, Manish. The fruit always is in implementation. So we will get to see how implementation happens. I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that in the next 20 years, India will see revolutionary changes in terms of the way education happens. And hopefully the belly of India, which I speak about, there'll always be, students who are successful, but the belly of India, 60% of India has to succeed if India has to succeed. And that's been my passion, Manish, all the time. How can we make these 60% into great leaders? And the way and the day we do that, India will become a great country. So Jai Hind, the new education policy will change all of this. I'm very hopeful and I'll be delighted to answer any questions that come my way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Atulji, for your crisp and small, presentation about new education policy. Sir, I remember we organized lots of conferences on higher education and schooling. So generally in conferences and when we discuss about the parents and the ecosystem players in this in the education, they generally complain. So this is the only conferences. Nothing will happen. So now when there is a multiple entry and exit system is there, university have to improve their quality of education. The faculty should be up to the mark. The technology, learning and research, university have to adopt all the thing. Otherwise, a student will take admission in first year and if the university is not doing great, he will migrate their college or university immediately in next years. So when the credit system is there in new education policy, definitely there is a pressure to university. They have to do good work in the terms of research and quality of education. And I also hope this new education policy will bring great reform system in our education ecosystem in coming few years. So thank you so much, Atulji, for your presentation. And I am also very positive about new education policy. In the coming years, we can see what the changes is coming.
I like to say, Manish, that COVID has taught us so much. Online is going to change the way education happens, and I think we've been talking about this. Online democratizes education. So things which were probably a prerogative or available only to the privileged few in bigger cities or foreign countries are now available to the best students of the country, wherever they are, whichever part of the world they are. Now, there are some challenges around connectivity, but those are easier challenges to manage. I'm sure in the next 1 year, I think the Prime Minister has already announced fiber in every village. So there's going to be fiber in every village. Let me give an example of Shulani. We are located a little in the wilderness, in a forest. So we didn't have great connectivity till 2 years back. We used to work on RF, which is radio frequency, and connectivity tends to be a challenge then. Today we have both BSNL and Jio with fiber running, and they are bidding with each other to make us clients of theirs. We've upgraded our technology to 1 gig, and we further want to improve that. We probably have the fastest technology in terms of bandwidth across the country. And we are ready to pay for it because technology is going to change the way education happens. So I think the point I wanted to make is universities and schools will have to become very agile, very flexible, and just go out and think outside the box, guys. And the day you do that, you'll be able to deliver great education, a great experience for your students, and hopefully phenomenal outcomes. So there's a question over here from Manish. I think that's your question, Manish. You're saying, what is the purpose of vocational education? So very clearly, vocational education is important. Absolutely, I think we need for students who don't have that intellectual caliber. Everyone doesn't have to go and become a scientist or do research. Especially if you look at Germany, they've got a very, very strong, in fact, Western countries, Switzerland also, they've got very, very strong vocational programs. So where you're learning how to do things with the hands. So I think that's also part of the new education policy where students, like I said, have to learn by doing with the hands. So you want to become a computer scientist, you should learn by doing programming rather than, learning theory, which used to be the old way of doing things. So absolutely, vocational education will be very important. Having said that, everyone doesn't have to do vocational. Everyone doesn't have to have those hands-on skills. I might be a scientist and I want to be a scientist, and we want to have people who are scientists. And there'll be some kids who are not built to be those thinkers. They want to be guys who do things with their hands. They become technocrats, technical people, and we need to give those skills to students. I think the industry will also play a great role over here. So a lot of our education needs to be aligned with the industry. So I think that's also very, very important, Manish.
Sir, recently HRD Minister, not HRD Minister, Education Minister. So now the department name is changed from HRD Ministry to Education Ministry. So recently our Education Minister invited to ask question about new education policy by doing hashtag on Twitter, hashtag NEP Transforming India. So around 50% question was about to postpone any NEET and JEE exam. So definitely, sir, next coming years there is no NEET and JEE exam, but sir, this year there is exam NEET and JEE exam. So what is your view about this? Postpone or cancel the NEET and JEE exam in this year?
I think my view is students need to move on. Students need to realize that, or institutions need to realize that if you push it too far, for example, let's say if colleges start in November or December, and it's not just about whether you can overcome or not, because 6 months of education are very, very difficult to overcome in a 3-year or a 4-year degree. So students will just go late in the cycle. I think it's important that students come back to college, to school, they start learning, because sitting at home, they're just getting very, very anxious. So one of the things that we have done at Shulani and many, many other universities across the world who are best practice they've done is we've started a program. Actually, 4th of August, we started our educational program. It's online, but we're trying to bring in a lot of interaction in that. We can't help it. I mean, at the end of the day, we would love to have students on campus, but unfortunately can't. So I would think COVID is there to stay. We can only keep hoping that things are not improving, Manish, and it's going to take a time before they improve. We probably are learning of tackling COVID better. But if you look at it, COVID is actually going exponentially. It's growing exponentially. India has become one of the most and the worst affected countries in the world. Hopefully, we'll solve it. I think we've got great leadership in the country. So on JEE and NEET, first of all, we don't know next year it will go away or not. Don't assume, because education is a concurrent subject, so it all depends upon how other states come in and alignment with states, getting it passed through parliament, and then there'll be a phased implementation. So my message to students who are preparing for NEET and JEE is, don't worry right now, just prepare for NEET and JEE for next year. And for this year, probably through online or other online proctoring mechanisms, I would assume that we should have the JEE and NEET fairly quickly, or devise some other mechanism for universities to start, colleges to start. You also need to realize, Manish, is that while at private universities we could start, but a very large population of students is waiting for government universities to start. They won't take admission in private universities, right, which have started. So we'll have to be very agile. We might have to have two sessions, one in August and another one that starts in November, which we are now planning to do. So I think the government should take a stance now. If it has to be an exam, then they should figure out an exam that's taken where students' lives are not at risk. It can be done online. And if they think that's not doable, I don't know what the constraints might be. I'm not part of those think tank. I would assume that they would then use some other mechanisms, whether it's marks in 10th and 12th or something, some other mechanism to get admission into JEE and medical colleges. Now, some students might say this is not fair. My only point over here, Manish, is that life is not fair. There'll always be ups and downs, and some people get lucky, some people get unlucky in life. So, but we have to move on. So the show must go on, and I think we should just go ahead and prepare ourselves for success and implementation of the policy.
And so before closing the session, my last question is with you. When Shulin University is going to start the 4-year undergraduate program?
I mean, the moment we are ready, in fact, we already have multiple programs that follow the new education policies recommendations. So I think the moment the government makes this law, we will give options to our students who are in 3-year programs to move to 4-year programs. We already have very, very strong research-driven undergrad programs, like I said, Manish. So students can do that. We've brought in liberal arts education in a very sizable way into Shulini. We've already done that. We're also setting up, I'd like to mention, we're setting up a high-powered committee headed by a very, very senior educationist of India to actually implement the new education policy in letter and spirit. We're very, very serious about it. And I can assure you, Manish, that we will implement the NEP in spirit across the university, and we'd like to be a role model for university education in the country.
Thank you so much, Atulji, for your valuable time. At this time, when you have to implement a new education policy in your education, in your university, and new academic session is going to start very soon, and you give your valuable time to us to understand more about new education policy. And sir, we publish a education magazine by the name of Education Campus. So definitely I will cut it short, this discussion, and publish 2-page article in our magazine. So I am getting permission from you that I'll publish that into our magazine also. And thank you so much, Atulji, for...
Absolutely, Manish. Go ahead and do that. And like I said, thank you very much, the audience. You've been wonderful. It's difficult speaking to an audience when you don't know where the audience is and you're speaking to the camera. But I hope you loved my thoughts. You can write to me. My Insta address is Atul Khosla 2013. So you can write to me on Insta. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. So do write to me. And if you have any questions, I'll be delighted. Education is my passion. And if I can help any one of you to get educated or build a great institution, it'll be my honor. I'm also thankful to the Indian Education Network. You guys are doing a great job. And thank you very much for the opportunity, Manish.
Thank you so much, Atulji. Thank you.
Wish you a great day. Bye-bye.